Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to my talk at VueConf. This conference is special for me because last year it was the last offline event before lockdown started. And I have the warmest memories about it. Really hope that next year we will be able to see each other offline in real life. But so far, let's enjoy our online interaction. And today I'm going to speak about the composition API. Yes, about the composition API again. I know that there were many talks about this, but this one is a bit different because I'm going to focus on the practical side of things, on how can you use composition API in your application and why would you use composition API in your application. So first, short part of the talk going to be slides with a very quick explanations of things, but we will get more about it in the live coding part. And main question I will try to answer here is what problem do we want to solve with composition API? Because I've seen so much misunderstanding about it, like should we use composition API, shouldn't we use it? Like a vast majority of users prefer options API and they do. But I believe there is a part of the code where using composition API might be really beneficial. And I will try to show this one. Let me quickly reintroduce myself. My name is Natalia Tepluhina, and I'm Vue.js core team member. I care mostly about Vue documentation, and if you read Vue 3 docs, there are high chances that you're reading something that I wrote. And I work as a staff front-end engineer at GitLab. And honestly, in our code base, we have so many places where composition API would be great. I'm really waiting for migration to Vue 3. That's why I wanted to show this in this talk. And I'm also a Google developer expert in web technologies. So let's jump to the composition API. And if you happen to never heard about what is it, it's an API that allows us to create standalone reactive state or properties outside of Vue components. Because in Vue 2, we were kind of bound to the component scope to have some reactive state. Vue 2.6 fixed it a bit, introducing Vue Observable, but it wasn't widely used and it was rather experimental one. With Vue 3, you don't really need a component anymore to create a reactive state. And when I'm speaking about reactive state, this means that changes of this state will trigger changes in, let's say, rendered template. Here we are creating a standalone property, actually two standalone properties with VueRef method. And this will create two reactive objects with a single property value. And then we can import them, use them in Vue components or outside of Vue components. So if we want to use them in our Vue component, we need to create them inside of the setup, which is a new component option in Vue 3, return them from the setup, and then they are available in Vue template or other options if we want to use them. And here we are simply building two Vue models onto inputs connected to these reactive properties. We can abstract reactive state. What does it mean? Sometimes setup in Vue components can get really bloated with creating many reactive properties. That's why it would be nice to have them abstracted in the standalone JavaScript files like I'm doing here with the use form. So here we're exporting function use form. And from what I see, most of people, myself included, prefer to call this a composable. So use form is a composable here, where we again creating two standalone properties and a function for submitting the form, and we return them all to be used in the Vue component. So here we're importing our use form. We do call it. It returns whatever we need. We return it from the setup. Yes, I know this part about returning things as an object is a bit annoying, but that's what we need to do for properties to be accessed in the template. And we can use them. This quick overview is still not answering why this API is useful. And if I was asked this question and I needed to give a short, crispy answer, it would be flexible, universal logic composition. In Vue 2, we had a few ways for logic abstraction and composition, but it struggles a bit with flexible and universal combination. So for example, we had mixins. Here is a mixin that will create two reactive properties, login and password, and will submit a form. And it seems legit. It would work with an imported in the component. But what if I want to also pass some unique parameter, like I would do with a function? What if I want to pass a form ID? And with simple plain mixin, this is impossible. They don't accept parameters. They are not flexible at all. Of course, you might say that I can create a mixin factory, but again, it creates more complications in the logic than it should, and it's still not flexible enough. Yeah. Another option would be creating a renderless component that exposes a single default slot, and through this slot, we are exposing the properties from the child form wrapper component. Again, would be login, password, and submit form. And we can call everything. We have reactive properties. And of course, we can pass a prop form ID here. So our idea about flexible is not that problematic anymore. But is it really universal? What if I want to access the login property somewhere outside of form wrapper in the template? And this is a problem because with renderless components, we are bound to the runtime. We cannot access everything that exposes from the child component somewhere else in the template or maybe in component options. And this is still not as universal as we want it to be. So let's try to solve this with a composition API. Let's try to build a flexible and universal abstraction. And for this, we will be using different APIs. I was going to create a composable that will call an API, handle loading and error state, and no matter what API is, it should work. So I will be using the cat API as my first API because I simply like cats and it's easy and understandable. But for the next APIs, we are going to use an almighty random, and this API will select two additional APIs for us. Let's spin the wheel and choose an API. So first one is going to be anime, and second one, this is REST API by the way, and second one is going to be Rick and Morty. This one has REST and GraphQL options, and I will probably play with a GraphQL one. So let's go to the IDE and run an application. This one so far is very plain. This is just an input field where I plan to add a search for my API, and we will build everything on top of this. So let's start creating our reactive properties. Of course, to have a search of the API, we need to create something called query, and this will be a ref with an initial value of an empty string. And let's start returning things from our setup. So here we are going to return the query, and I want to add vModel to my input. So we will have two-way binding with a query. As you can see, I'm not using query value here because for template it's already unwrapped. And of course, I will need some result, again with initial value of an empty string. And I want to have a method that will be actually calling an API. it will perform an Axios call. So I'm uncommenting Axios here, and I will call it call API. It's going to be an async method where we will have a result awaiting of the Axios call. So the Axios get, and let's go and copy paste the URL. So we have our cats, we will be searching by breed. So here we go. I'm fetching this breed ID. And instead of breed ID here, I will put my, I need to replace a string to the string template, and here I will be using my query value. Good, and let's console log our REST to see what we are fetching from the API. I will also return result and call API from here, and I will run my call API when I'm clicking the search button. Okay, let's try to type something and see what we have as a response. Where is our console? So I'm trying to search for a cat. I'm calling the API and I have some kind of response where I have breeds and URL. This is actually the URL I want to have from the result. So it will be result data 0 URL. Yes, data 0 URL. Right? Let's go again with Abyssinian cat. Yeah, I have an image. Let's display this one in our interface. So here there will be an image with the source, and let's, instead of console log this, let's make a result value assigned with a res data 0 URL. So result and also some random image. Not really useful, but it is what it is, and I only want to show this when I have a result. Okay, should be a bit more interactive now. Oh, okay, I forgot to make it dynamic. Now we have a cat. This is nice, but it would be also good to have some loading and error state, like in real-life application when we're loading an image, or maybe something happened and the image is not loaded. So let's start adding more things on top of this. So here I will have a block for error, and let's say like, oops, something went wrong. Please try again. And I want it to be red, so I have a specific class for just coloring it red. And of course, we need to add more things here. I want error to be Boolean, so the initial value of it is false. We're not errored immediately when we started an application, and let's also add loading state. Again, should be false until we actually start typing and searching in our input. And let's also show a loading here with a simple if loading. I don't want to add any fancy spinner, it will be just text. And here, if we're not loading, we will show a result. So when we start in the call API, let's say that error value is false, loading value is true, and let's add try catch block. So try catch, and finally. So in try, we will be calling the API. And if everything is fine, we will be assigning the value. In catch, if something went wrong, we will say that error value is true. And in finally, we need to set loading value to false, whatever happened. Okay. And of course, we need to return our loading and error states from here. First of all, something, and secondly, I need to add v if error. Okay, let's try to search again for cats. So there is loading state, there is an image, and if I break something like this, there should be an error. So yeah, something went wrong, please try again. Awesome, we created very basic API caller, and we already see that our component became a bit bloated. So maybe we could abstract this logic and move it to some composable to play with it nicely inside the component after. So let's go to our composables and create some use API.js, which is going to be our composable, and I will import ref method from Vue immediately because this is something we want to have here. And let's copy paste the logic. We will modify it slightly in our function. So I'm exporting function use API, and here we go. So what we're going to keep here? First of all, we are going to keep all the reactive properties because every single API call we want, we will have a query, which is a search term, a result, of course, a call result, error, and loading state. Do we want to keep an Axios call here? I would say no, because what if I'm going to use a different method to fetch my data? Maybe I will switch to Apollo client. Maybe I'm going to use native fetch. Maybe I will be retrieving the data from somewhere else, maybe reading local storage. I don't know. So I don't want to have an Axios call inside of the composable. Instead, I will pass a method here called getResults. And when I'm performing a try, I will just call getResults. And this method should be somehow connected with a search term that is stored in this composable. So when I'm calling getResults, which will be a function, I want to pass my query value here from the reactive state. Again, there is some shaping here, so we are checking data 0 URL, and I don't think that we need it because it will be defined in the external component depending on what way of fetching data we use. We will be shaping them there. Instead, we will simply assign the result of the getResults to our result value. And of course, we're going to keep error value and loading value logic here. So here is the composable. In the component, let's import our use API from our composables. And let's replace the logic here. I will remove reactive properties so far. So we want to get everything like this. Is equal to use API call. And we need to pass a function here. So I will have a query parameter and a function. So here I'm going to call my API, await access get. I don't need value anymore because we already passed query value from our composable. So it's just a query. And I want to return my data shaped, so it will be res data 0 URL. And of course, I need to remove all the call API theme from here. Okay. Now let's go and check if we broke an API. Ref is defined but never used. Yeah, we don't use it here anymore. Okay, let's search for Abyssinian cat. And we have an image. So our abstracted logic like this is working nicely. Like more cats. Okay, let's search for something else. Siberian. Yes, this is Siberian cat. So we have the cat API working. And I will comment it. So we see this is for cat API. Let's go and use more different APIs. So here is an API to fetch any kind of anime, and I'm going to use the same composable to fetch and show anime posters. So the only thing we need to check that we will use this endpoint, and we need to filter it with text. So let's add anime API, and I will copy paste the logic for now. The return should go to the end anyways. This is common for everything. And let's copy paste this part. Oops, I need also to move the curly bracket to the end. Okay, let's command the cat API, and we will copy paste this anime. And we need to add a filter, and I just remember that it's filter by text is equal to our query. Of course, this won't work because the response should have a different structure. So let's simply make a console log of response to see how to shape the data. And let's close our documentation and go back here. So I will be searching for bleach. Search. Something went wrong, of course, because we are trying to shape an API that is different. It's not like REST 0, probably REST 0 is not existing even. So we have data, where we have an array. I will just be using only the first element. So data 0, attributes, poster image, original. Okay, let's try to recreate it here. Data 0, attributes, no cover, poster image, original. So flaky. Again, which, search, So I have an image here, and now I need to return this to my composable. One more try. Bleach, search, and we have a bleach poster here. Let's be respectful to Vue 3 and search for one piece. And here we go. So our composable is working with 2 APIs already. Now let's be fancy and use Rick and Morty API. And to show the difference, I want to use the GraphQL version of it. As you can see, I already have a query for fetching characters with filtered name Rick. And it's going to give us a list of characters. I'm not going to explain GraphQL API here, but we're basically shaping the response with a request. And this should be a query string. So let's again copy paste what we have here and have Rick and Morty API. And I will just paste it and comment this one. So Rick and Morty is GraphQL one, which means that we will be changing our GET request to POST one. We also need to have a GraphQL query itself. I will create a characters query. This is just a string, and I will copy paste everything from the Explorer. So we shape the string here. And we need to make a small change. I want to pass a name as a variable. And when you work with GraphQL queries, you can pass variables there this way. So I'm creating a variable called name, which will be string. And I pass it to query. Looks a bit cryptic, but if you work with GraphQL, you know this is the way to do. So here I will be using post, and as a URL we are going to use Rick and Morty GraphQL API. And as you can see, query is not here. We will need to add it to the body. And our post request body will have the query. And this will be our characters query and variables. And as variables, as you can see, we're passing a name. So name will be our query. So we have our post request, and let's make a console log res. Okay, let's go to our application and search for Rick. Of course, it complains because, again, we have a different shape, but you can see that we have a response. And response has data with characters array. So now we need to perform all the logic to retrieve an image from here. So data, characters, results, 0 image. Res, bear with me. Data, characters, results, 0, first result, image. Let's hope I was correct. So we search for Rick, we have an image, awesome. Now let's take this, return it to our composable, remove the console log, and let's search for Morty, just to make some difference. And here is Morty, and this is actually my face right now after everything just worked. So we have 3 different APIs and the same composable that works for all of them, luckily. And you can see that the logic that we left in the component is just connected with an API call specific itself. And it handles loading and error and everything we want to. So if you wonder how the code looks like at the end, here is a repository with the final result of all the composables. I think there is no Rick and Morty there, only cats and dogs, but you can recreate it yourself. And thank you for listening to my talk.